Hi everybody, I'm Patrick.
And I'm Michael. You're watching another episode of Star Wars News and Views.
The most important episode ever.
So there's this comic book store in New York City called Midtown Comics. And so, it's just another day in the comic store. Mm-hmm. And in through the door walks George Lucas. And he goes up to the comic book racks and he takes a Star Wars comic out and he looks at it and he goes, I'm going to buy this. So George Lucas goes to a comic book store and buys Star Wars comics is basically the story. And there were some people there that took photos with them. You can look at them here. This is not made up. That's clearly him. He doesn't really look that impressed, actually.
I know.
But, what did he expect? It's the worst place in the world to go if you want to be inconspicuous.
I know. George Lucas walks in. Everybody in the comic book store just drops their comics and looks at him and just stares at him slowly while he walks over to the store. And he's just like, looking at Star Wars. And everyone's just like, what's he going to do? He's like, dude, don't grab something else.
So, I think that's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's funny I think it's cool that he goes into comic book shops. But it must be hard because in the 1970s, he actually co-owned a comic book shop in New York City called Super Snipe Comics. This is legendary place because it was the first comic book shop. First of all, back then, there weren't a lot of comic book shops. You usually went to the newsstand. Mm-hmm. And this one treated comic books as art. So attached to the store, they had an art gallery where there was original drawings and stuff like that. So he was a big comic book fan. It must suck for him that he can't actually really go into a comic book store and buy comics.
Especially with the new line of Star Wars out, everybody knows about the Star Wars comics at this point. It's the biggest ones off the shelves, right? And he just walks in.
You think that he could just phone them up and be like, "Can you send me the new Star Wars comics? I'm kind of curious."
Yeah, he can buy them online too. I mean, I know it doesn't have the same feel of going to buy them, but if he was that self-conscious about it.
Yeah. So it's cool that there's these amusing photos of George Lucas in a comic book store buying Star Wars comics. Do you think it was the new ones, or was he buying back issues of this is when it was good? I wrote this one.
I think it would be the new ones.
Yeah, it's gonna be. He's probably curious about where they're going with the new ones because he was involved in some of the early comic books. Especially, he had to approve the treatments for Dark Empire, and he was actually said to be a really big fan of Dark Empire. So he does care about Star Wars comics, even though they make way too many of them for him to keep track of. He's, from time to time, he's kind of curious.
Yeah, I mean, he was a comic book fan anyways. Yeah. He owned one, and he got a lot of the influence for Darth Vader from Doctor Doom even, right? So
exactly.
I'm sure he was a pretty big fan at the time.
And Darth Vader was influenced by the New God's Darkseid. He's named Darkseid, right?
Yeah,
is that a coincidence? I don't think so. So that's cool that George Lucas is out there buying comic books in New York City. And I think that's all for today's episode. Just wanted to bring you that little tidbit because it's kind of funny. So see you guys next episode.